Hey everybody, it's Bust with our month in review for the 4.10 patch. So this is the balance patch for the Fates Voyage Onward. And so, in terms of me personally and the FTP Bust channel, I think this was a pretty good month. I had a great time with the ladder. I never got particularly frustrated along the way. We got to play some fun and inventive decks. Outside of the ladder, we started up in the Champion Draft Series Season 2. That's been pretty fun. And then we top cut the World's Open qualifier, and so that was pretty cool as well. And so I had fun. I had a good time with this patch, no denying that. But lots of stuff happened over the past month. Lots to talk about. Let's focus in on that. And so, with the release of the balance patch, to me, it wasn't what they changed, but what they didn't, right? With Nyla Jana being both the most commonly played deck and the highest win rate deck, I expected there to be some kind of levers pulled within this kit, whether or not that's some minor champion tuning to where maybe Nyla flips at 17 or Jana flips at 7. Maybe they do some kind of tuning to Howling Gale to where that maxes out at 4 damage or something, or it starts at 1, but it can build up to 5. Like, I was expecting there to just be something other than just a minor change to the Exalted Cloudwinder. It was absolutely bonkers to me that this kit did not get changed. And then even more so, the kind of number 2 deck, the counter deck to Nyla Jana, being the Warden of the Tribes deck, having the Warden nerfed back up to 9 mana, just had to have been the most massive indicator that Nyla Jana was just going to be an absolute terror across the remainder of the Fates Voyage Onward standard season. And, you know, Riot's not full of dum-dums, right? They can immediately look at this and go, oh yeah, that was the most popular deck and we're just going to leave it, right? That was a kind of informed and I'm sure knowledgeable decision that they made. They weren't just like, fuck it, I got drunk before patch night. I'm not going to make any changes. I'm too hungover, right? They had like realistic expectations that this Nyla Jana kit wasn't too oppressive, and we should have another month of this thing, which I think was fine. It wasn't that bad, but I think it kind of brings up some interesting questions in terms of what we really expect out of the balance patches. And so, I'm curious as to what people feel and what Riot feels is a good speed for these. Like, I think we're all kind of in agreement that the monthly patch cycle is a good thing. I really love the monthly shakeups of the set release and then the balance patch and the variety patch plus Eternal season, and then the next season being standard with the new set and everything. I really love the pacing and the feel of the new sets. But what I'm meaning in kind of like terms of speed is like how big should these changes be? And so if we think back to like the previous balance patch, I feel like I don't know if the number of changes was bigger, but they were certainly more impactful, right? I cycled back through the balance patch today for the 4.10 patch, and there were a lot of changes. It felt like they changed maybe 20, 25 separate cards, but the only like really, really super impactful things were those changes to the Jana kit and then the changes to Warden of the Tribes. And so I'm just kind of curious how people feel in the sense that you could at least for me, I feel like the Fates Voyage Onward 1.0, the Fates Voyage Onward 4.9 patch was pretty good. And so should we just kind of continue that on to where we have essentially a second month of that patch? Or, should we say, well, that was fun. Mark it in your memory banks as a good time. Here comes a sweeping set of changes to make this new format feel different. Really, kind of separate the 4.10 patch from the 4.9 patch. And I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. I feel like, we would want to play the good patches for as long as we can, and then we'd like to cycle out the bad patches as quickly as we can. But, there's such a short turnaround in being able to figure that out. Like, I would say that, realistically, after like 1 week after a set's release, at a max of 2 weeks after a set's release, Riot has to probably be pretty locked in on what they're going to be doing for the balancing within the next patch. And so that's really fast for them. And so they're not going to have kind of full information on the changes that get made. And so they may not completely get a feel for, oh, this set feels really good or this set doesn't feel that great. So we need to make some big shakeups. And so I don't know. I don't have the answers with that. It's tough to say, at week 4 that this set was really fun. I want to play another month of that because the decision has already been made and the changes are going to be coming at you. But I personally like the big swings. I would prefer that month to month there's just a big change every single time, as opposed to getting stuck within metas that don't feel the same. And so I'm not saying one thing is good, one thing is bad, one way is better, and one way is worse. I think I would just personally prefer the big swingier patches as opposed to the kind of minor updates. I'll say from like a content creator perspective, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of this season just being like, well, fuck, I got to just play all the same decks I played last season. And right, there wasn't too much room for innovation, I felt. And so for me, it was kind of a bummer. But when a format's good, and I don't think we should complain about it too much. And so with the kind of minor set of changes that we just saw, it makes me start to, kind of question how good is too good. I feel like, outside of Janna, the real format defining card coming out of the Fates Voyage Onward was actually Miriam. She does an insane amount of work just in terms of pure value, letting you cycle away a card that you don't need right now, letting you build up that spell mana if you need to regain some tempo. But the kind of undefined, the thing that you don't see too frequently or talk about too frequently with Miriam is how she really defines how the aggro decks of the format look. If you want to think of a deck like a Gwen deck, right, to where on turn 1 you want to play that 2/1 1-mana Hallowed unit, and then on turn 2 you want to play Hallowed Caretaker, whatever the 2/2 mana, the 2/2 for 2 mana guy is that attacks and creates the hallowed thing. Like, those cards just get completely shut down by Miriam, and so you have to really start to ask yourself, is it worth me getting 2 for 1 to trade off with a Miriam that already got her value, right? She already got her upcycle, just to get a Hallowed 2 going within my deck? Probably not, right? Gwen looked pretty horrifically bad in this format, and that's probably highly in part because all of the non-Gwen draws just get completely shut down by Miriam. And you see that kind of across the board. Like, if a deck like Pirates was really existing in this format, like, what cards in Pirates look good against Miriam, right? You can play Legion Rearguard. Legion, well, you can't in Standard, but thinking kind of classically of Pirates, Legion Rearguard looks good in the face of Miriam. And then what do you have? Like, you have Mirai Wardens, those don't look good. Legion Saboteurs don't look good. Shell Shockers don't look good. Like, just everything up the curve does not run into Miriam well. And I don't think that she really, kind of catches enough credit for the void that she's filled in. Filling the void is not the correct term. I don't think she gets enough credit for the impact that she's had on the meta in terms of kind of regulating what the aggro decks are allowed to look like. Same thing kind of applies to Omen Hawk to a lesser extent, a card that didn't need buffed but got it anyways. And how many games do you want to play to where you put your Legion Saboteur on the board and it trades with Omen Hawk, right? Is dealing 1 point of damage worth your opponent getting the top units of their deck +1/+1? No, it's not. The Omen Hawk wins that every single time. And so we've had all of these units kind of come up and pick up that shut down the aggro decks. And while it doesn't appear as though they're format defining staples or something, they really have a mega impact on the format. And so, like, I am curious, at what point is, good too good, or is what point these cards allowed to just kind of stick around? Because as we move over to something like Sunken Temple, I think Sunken Temple is really interesting in the sense that it can kind of create a lot of decks, right? You're going to see an absolute fuck ton of Sunken Temple Twisted Fate here in the upcoming month. This is 100% going to be one of the most popular decks coming out of the Eternal Season. And that's one of the interesting things that Sunken Temple allows to have happen, right? It has this fairly powerful effect of updrafting your hand. It has the effect that really matters in drawing an extra card every turn, but these things kind of combine together. Now with Twisted Fate, you get to draw 7 cards on the next turn, right? You're only actually up 1 card, but Twisted Fate sees you draw 7 cards. He's almost assuredly going to flip on that turn. Sunken Temple can also do stuff, say, with like Jinx, right? Jinx sees you empty out your hand because it all got updrafted away. She gets to flip, you get the Death Rocket, woo-woo, do Jinx things. And so, it's kind of a bummer in the sense that, is Sunken Temple like really too good in the general sense? And then should it be allowed to, kind of stick around because it allows so many other decks to happen. And so I feel like these two are in kind of a similar space in terms of power level. I think they are both overtuned and exceptionally good, but I think that Miriam is just generally too good in the sense that pretty much every single PNZ deck on the planet is going to be playing Miriam because she's so overtuned, to where specific decks are going to be looking for the Sunken Temple. And it's a very kind of interesting activator that you can interact with explorers and stuff. I think that Sunken Temple is the kind of card that should be allowed to be overtuned, as to where something like Miriam probably needs to catch a nerf. And so the last card we'll be talking about here is Champion Strength. I suspect it's going to be up for the nerfing block. I think that this is a card that's probably going to be going down to, say, give a +3/+3 and a rally. So it's like a 4 Demacia with a rally attached to it. And I think it's a bit unfortunate. I know that there's like a real love-hate camp as far as Champion Strength goes. I love Champion Strength. I think it's a great card. I know tons and tons of people hate it, but I think that the problem with Champion Strength is how visible it is in beating you. And so if you look at a card like Miriam that we've been talking about this whole way, Miriam doesn't look like she's beating you, right? She gets a lot of her strength within deck building, right? The Gwen deck example we made, Gwen's just not playable. So you don't have these situations to where your Gwen deck just gets beat by Miriam over and over and over again because you're just not playing Gwen because of Miriam. And so she does a lot of things in that sense to where it just warps the state of the meta. But it's also a card that comes down. You don't really feel it when that 2-drop comes down. Gets you a turn or two of virtual card advantage because your opponent can't attack into it. She eventually trades with something, but she's already got her value because she updrafted or gave you the mana. Like, you don't feel Miriam beating you, but she did. To whereas with Champion Strength, you feel it, right? when your opponent rallies and they have 5 units on the board and they're attacking you for 47 points of damage, you feel that, and it's very apparent and very obvious. And so I feel like it's unfortunately going to be catching a nerf because of its visibility, and I think it just doesn't get enough credit in the amount of work it takes to use this skillfully, in the sense that, you know, it's very easy to say, oh, bust. It's not that hard to play an Acorn and a Janna, and then you champion Strength 3 elusives and hit for 15. Like, those games do have a lot of just nonsense, oops, I win kind of games, but it doesn't really showcase the games to where you made the decisions to not trade, or the unit selections that you made within your challenges to keep your Petricite Broadwings alive, how you sequenced your units to ensure that you had maximum guys on board. Like, with all of the Champion Strength that we've played over the course of the past 3 or 4 months, I feel like we really kind of pick up on a lot of those spots, and I don't think they quite get the credit that they deserve. Because you do have so many of those games that just, you know, are complete visible blowouts and the game just ends. Your opponent spends their 8 mana, puts the circle on the board, and you concede the game before the spell even resolves. And so I think that is a bit of a bummer. But I think the kind of interesting talking point about Champion Strength is, if you look at all of the cards we've talked about up to this point, they all break the rules of the game, right? If we look at the Janna kit, she has a bunch of cards that draw extra cards. You normally get 1 card a turn. If you draw 3 cards in a turn, you just broke the rules of the game. They have the cards that let you cheat on mana, whether or not that's Miriam generating extra mana or having Windborne Mariners come down for free, giving you that +2 mana advantage. You're breaking the rules of the game by having the discounts on the prices that you're paying for the cards. Same thing applies for things like Scout units and Champion Strength. You normally get to attack 1 time every other turn. The Scout unit's getting to attack twice a turn, and then Champion Strength giving you the attack token when you don't have it, all let you break the rules of the game. And in my opinion, these are the things that cause problems when they're overtuned, right? These are the kind of cards that they probably need to make a better effort to keep in check, since they already have some sort of advantage in breaking the rules. Now that they are both breaking the rules and overtuned, to me that starts to cause a little bit of a problem. And so I was actually very big on the presence of Warden of the Tribes. I feel like Warden of the Tribes was a card that should be allowed to be good, because it doesn't really break the rules of the game, right? It's a highly stat efficient kind of card. You get to play it and then you get like plus 60 stats, but all of those stats are interactable with, right? You can still play Ruinations, you can play Buried in Ice, you can harsh winds a couple of them and not die in that combat. Like, you have options to interact with that, and then at the end of the day, they aren't breaking any of the rules of the game, right? They're just getting a very good price on the stats that they're putting on board. And so I ultimately, feel like the Janna kit's overtuned for breaking the rules. Champion Strength's overtuned for breaking the rules. Warden of the Tribes was probably overtuned for just being too effective. But I feel like a card like Warden of the Tribes is one that should be allowed to be overtuned to where these rule breakers need to be kind of reined in. And continuing on the discussion of Champion Strength, we must bring up Akaido's tweet that scouts as a combo deck. And so if you're not familiar with Akaido, he's one of the most accomplished players in Legends of Runeterra. He has a stream over on Twitch, and for me, he's one of those people that whenever he's talking about the game, it's very obvious that he knows what the fuck he's talking about. And he's one of these people that whenever he gets to talking, it's just like one of those spaces to where it's like, oh yeah, you're right. That makes perfect sense, everything that you're saying right now. And so he does have that wonderful combination of A, knowing what the fuck he's talking about, and B, wording it in a way that makes sense and is understandable. And I guess kind of C, in this era of every take having to be the hottest with the most spice sprinkled on top, I feel like he has an appropriate level of spiciness. He's going habanero on his takes as opposed to ghost pepper out there, and so I really enjoy the work that he puts out. He'll occasionally use words I don't understand. Right? He's a he's a youngster out there while we're out here just booming it up. But it's kind of is what it is. The kids use words you don't understand. You got to look them up on Urban Dictionary and just move on. But nonetheless, he starts to posit that Scouts is a combo deck. It's about building up the big combo turns, and it's no longer that kind of value-based deck that it was when the Rising Tides was initially released, to where you're taking your challenger units into the opposing units, you're taking down their 1 health units with your Misfortune love taps, and then developing good combats because of that. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. The thing that it immediately drew me to, and I immediately drew parallel to, was the Splinter Twin deck in Magic. And I've got the main combo up on the screen. If you're not particularly familiar with this was a main combo back when I was still playing Magic competitively. And the idea is that you have Splinter Twin that lets you tap a unit. That unit makes a copy of itself and comes down on the board. But if you put it on a card like Deceiver Exarch, when Deceiver Exarch comes onto the board, that gets to untap another permanent. And so the idea is you put the Splinter Twin on your Deceiver Exarch, you tap it to make a copy, the copy comes in, untaps the initial Deceiver Exarch, which you can then tap again. You can tap it to make a copy of itself, the copy comes in, untaps the one that's been enchanted, and you cycle over and over and over again until you have a arbitrarily large number of Deceiver Exarchs, which then attack and win the game. And the thing that was kind of interesting with the Splinter Twin decks is you won with the Splinter Twin combo probably like half the time. The other half of the time, you were in this kind of space to where your opponent did like 5 damage to themselves from land. You got to deal like 6 damage to them with Deceiver Exarchs and Pester Mites and Snapcaster Mages. And with that, your opponent's at 9. With your opponent at 9, you play a Lightning Bolt, you play a second Lightning Bolt, you play a Snapcaster Mage on a Lightning Bolt, and you've got yourself up to 20. And so at no point over the course of that game did you play a Splinter Twin or play a Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker, but you were able to play the kind of control deck role instead and still burn out your opponent. And that's one of the things that I draw the biggest parallel to Scouts with, and I think that's kind of the space that Akaido's getting in. Even though he may not be aware of Magic or the Splinter Twin combo kind of thing, is the sense that to me at least, I have to agree that I do think that Scouts kind of functions as that combo deck, even though it's not something like Lee Sin, right? Lee Sin comes down, it's very obvious that you just got 20 to 0'd. That feels like a combo, right? Or something like Varus, to where Varus gets 28 attack, he 20 to 0's you in one swing. That feels very much like a combo deck. It doesn't essentially feel like a combo, but to me, I think he's pretty spot on in terms of what Scouts does and the way that it kind of develops these games to where it has to make the distinction of Am I going for this combo kill with the champion strength to where I've got 4 scout units on the board, 2 regular units, and I just overwhelm you that way? Or is this going to be that kind of classical board control style of game to where I'm threatening to flip a misfortune, I'm giving you bad combats because of the challengers and the love taps, and we're just kind of leaving the threat of the champion's strength as a strategy to where we don't actually plan to play the champion's strength. And so I think it was a very interesting space that he brought forth. I think that a deck like Splinter Twin, which is most certainly a combo deck, is kind of like right in that realm of what he's talking about. And I think it's a pretty spot on assessment. And so the World's Qualifier weekend has come and gone just a couple of days ago. Lots of interesting news coming out of both the NA and the EMEA regions. And so in the NA, AJ the Pro takes down the Fates Voyage Onward World's Qualifier. If you scroll back in time to see who won the initial Fates Voyage Onward Open event, also AJ the Pro. And so an absolutely monumental achievement there. I believe the boat is called the Fates Voyage, right? With this set, Nyla's boat, the Fates Voyage, Onward is what it's doing, right? The Fates Voyage is moving onward. I don't know. I don't read lore. I just assume that's what it is. But assuming I'm right, AJ deserves to be the captain of the Fates Voyage. Very impressive. Again, I think there's been people that have won multiple events. I think Floppy Mudkip might have won multiples. I'm sure there's a handful of them across time that have won multiple opens and seasonals and such, but winning them back to back, I think AJ is the sole holder of that title, and so big props to him. The kind of negative moments coming out of the EMEA with Boxer, if you're not familiar with the recent events with him, also going back to the initial Fates Voyage Onward Open, he made the top cut on 2 separate accounts, finished in the top 4 on one of them, and then started tweeting about it. And so that is against the terms of service. You're only allowed to play 1 account in the open events. Bringing 2 is a no-no. That's a don't do that, please. And so this, of course, brings up a riot of a riot of discontent amongst the competitive Twitter scene. And for me, I think you have to kind of look at it from 2 separate viewpoints. Like, number 1, what was the intent? And number 2, what was the level of severity? And so with the level of intent, what was the guy's plan? Was he planning on being in this space to where he gets within the top cut, he's, mowing down the opponents, he gets paired against himself in the top 8, and then he gets a free win? Was that his idea, or was his idea like, hey, I'm going to get 2 accounts in. I'm going to have 1 on the left bracket, 1 on the right bracket. We're going to meet in the finals, and then I'm going to show the internet how massive my Legends of Runeterra dong is, given that I'm able to get 2 accounts into the finals of this event. And, wherever that lands, it's not really for me to say. I don't know what his intent was in the event, but I am going to just assume without further knowledge that it wasn't without malice. And so I don't think he really went into the event with the intent to break the terms of service and have some kind of cheating thing happen. I know that's unfortunate for all the people that he beat through the open rounds. At least for the people in the top cut, if they played against him, they got pushed up a win. So those people that played against him got the additional prize earnings. They got the additional Runeterra points. He got his thing stripped, so he didn't get any money for the event and didn't get the Runeterra points for it. I have to feel like that's enough without further knowledge. It can be easy to jump into these things without the knowledge of the terms of service. Like, it's very easy to point out a line as a screenshot from an article that came out 14 months ago, but it's kind of tough to assume that everyone in the world jumped into this event without malice and stuff. And so I think from that side, I think it's kind of okay. The level of severity is where I start to worry about things. It is kind of easy to just cheat in these events. In the purely hypothetical scenario, let's say I really needed some world's points. I call up my new friend Akaido that we talked about earlier in the video. I say, hey man, you're way better than me at this game. I need to get these points. Will you play some games for me? Will you sit over here and play the games with me? Can you hang out while we're in the anonymity of the internet, and we'll just have some cheats, not tell anybody about it, and then move forward. And so That's always been a problem in online gaming. There's nothing you can really do about it. And looking at something to like that level of severity, where I think that's where you're in the space of these people should be suspended for years or maybe even completely banned, that doesn't really line up to me as the same as playing in the open on two separate accounts. And so I don't think Boxer's out here pulling like Alex Bertasini level of cheats with Magic to where he just deserves to be banned from all the card games ever. I think he's probably more in that space of, should have known better but didn't know, or knew better but didn't quite care enough to really worry about it. And so I think when you kind of start getting down that that point of just blanket banning everyone that doesn't know or does know but does it anyways, playing on multiple accounts, you start getting into that space to where you just start pushing it into the depths and into the shadows to where people do it but you don't hear about it. And I think that starts to be a more kind of worrisome aspect. And so my take, if he starts doing this shit again, then just get rid of him. I don't think it should be kind of a pass, for people to be like, oh, well, Boxer did it and I didn't know any better. But I think it's kind of fair to say he was punished and he doesn't seem to be doing it anymore. So let's just kind of move on and move forward. Still within the space of the world's qualifiers, I think Riot has to get it together with this. Say what you want about Riot or about Runeterra being spotted in the wild, the communication that they do in terms of advertising and telling people that the game actually exists and stuff. Within the game, this was an actual bummer for me. And so my typical way to work through the open stage of the open, the day one of the open, if you will, is I just play in the afternoon. And so I wake up, I go to the gym, I go outside and touch some grass, I do some chores. I typically go to the grocery, then I'll come home. After I've done all my adulting for the day, that's when I sit down and play in the open. And it's worked pretty well up to this point. With this one, I had very specific constraints with it. I had to be done by a certain time. We had a family event happening within the day. If I wanted to participate in the open, I knew I was going to have to play in the morning and be done by a certain time. And so trying to figure out when the open was actually supposed to fucking start is incredibly challenging to do. And so in my experience in figuring this out, you go to the competitive 2.0 article, which is like 16 months old at this point. It says that your event starts at 6 a.m. Shard time. No idea what shard time is. I assume that is 6 a.m. in Pacific time because Riot is in Pacific. That may or may not be accurate. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. So I go into the game client. This thing on the screen is what's now telling me when the open is going to start. It says, not right here, but on this screen, if you're looking at it the day before the open, it says that the open starts in like 18 hours. If you start calculating when 18 hours is, that's like 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning. You know that the fucking thing doesn't start at 4 in the morning, so that's completely inaccurate. And so it's like you wake up, you go into the next day, you're like, okay, well, I'll just wake up in the morning, click on the buttons, see when the thing actually starts. You pull up the game client, and it says Runeterra Open starts in like 21 days. It has this big like Volibear screen is advertising the next one, not the one that's only about to happen within a matter of a few hours. And like these things are ultimately super, super frustrating. And that's just on the front side of the event. I know on the back side of the event, there's been a lot of issues, not a lot, there's been reports of issues to where people are trying to finish off the event and they don't know what time to start because they don't know what time the thing actually ends. You don't know if it ends at midnight or it ends at 11 p.m. or whatever it's supposed to be. This should be one of these like really straightforward things to get figured out. Like I do computer work. I know dates are fucking annoying to deal with, but this was like ultimately a massive, massive pain point for me. And as someone that is like so heavily involved within the game, not being able to figure out when an event starts is pretty obnoxious. And so I would love to see these things get cleaned up a bit. If I have some kind of way to actually go and see what time this event starts, especially if you don't have to go and look at the LOR report website or the Runeterra report website to figure out when the event actually happens. I think this is an actual bit of an embarrassment as far as the open is concerned. And continuing on with my complaining about the UI, I'm not the first one to make these complaints about this thing up in the top right corner of the game, but I do have to kind of come out and voice some of it now. And so, up to this point, I've never really had a reason to try and message anyone in the game. It's like if I want to scrim with somebody or if you need to play someone in an event, you can use the chat feature for that. But other than that, I never really used the chat feature up to this point. But I've made mention on the channel multiple times over the past few months. I've been trying my hardest to get my brother to switch from playing Hearthstone to come over to playing Legends of Runeterra. I finally got him to jump in. He's been playing through some of the game. He's been in here. But one of the things that's very easy to do in Hearthstone that is incredibly impossible to do on Runeterra is to chat with each other. And if you've ever tried to hold a conversation with someone, you send a message, almost instantly they send you a message back, and then you send them a message, and there's a little bit of back and forth. You know, it's happening instantly. The key thing knowing is when that person sends you a message. And so what I found to have happen in this is we'll both be out here playing games. He'll send me a message. The only way to tell I've received a message is to push this little blue circle at the top right. That makes this little slider bar thing slide out, and I can see based on the little people icon if there's a number on it. That means I've received a message. So if I want to see if I have received a message from my brother, I have to keep constantly going back here and clicking on this little thing because there's no notification within an actual game that I've received a message. And so that ultimately just makes it super frustrating. You're trying to get someone integrated and involved into the Legends of Runeterra. They send you a message and you ignore them for 10 minutes, and then they have to wait 10 minutes to see a response because they're in game, and then it just doesn't work. And so I've ultimately been pretty disappointed in that. Otherwise, one of the things that I get super, super mad with this thing is you want to concede out of a game, you push on the cogs, that's where the concede game button is, and then you either go to the next screen and push on support or you push something else. And so are you not already salty because you lost a game or you're about to lose a game or you want to get out of the game? You're now just out here pushing all of these buttons and not able to get the correct screen to open. It's ultimately super frustrating, and I often just quit playing at that point. And so that's another UI thing I would love to see fixed, is if you can get it easier to get out of a game, especially playing on mobile. And so I did talk quite a bit of trash about the UI, but I must admit Riot has been putting forth some absolutely fantastic changes in terms of the UI. A lot of these things are coming through just completely undocumented, and so everyone should be familiar with the new end game screen now, to where you can go and look at the player more in depth, you can become friends, you can look at their deck and everything. That was, well spoken about and quite visible. Absolutely fantastic update, love everything about it. But there's been additional things added within the game that just nobody talks about. They weren't in the patch notes, and I did want to give some props to the people at Riot for adding in some of these sweet ass features. And so we do have a couple of them on the screen. The deck filter thing is up and active now. You can switch between standard and eternal decks, between all of the other formats. So if you have 40 and 50 decks within your online package of deck lists, you can now filter those down to the relevant event. Very nice quality of life update. There's been a couple of these other things added throughout the game. Very nice. Another one of the big notes I made was if you load the game through the Riot launcher, as you click on Legends of Runeterra, you now have this really fancy looking splash screen. It's not currently up to date, but it does give you this nice visual in terms of what's happening with Legends of Runeterra and everything, keep you updated on the news and things. I think this is a very fantastic update as well. And so one of my stances with Riot over the course of the history of Runeterra is they may not nail everything on the first try, but given a little bit of time to iterate on everything, they tend to knock it out of the park. And so I admittedly think that the devs do a fantastic job. The non-dev people, you can't give Ruben Zoo and Guskin all the credit for everything that happens. There's a ton of people that actually work on the game. I think it's, given the time, they may not hit it on the first swing, but they do eventually come around and iterate and make everything absolutely fantastic. And I love the dedication that they have to it. It's easy to swing for the fences and miss, and everybody shits on your work like we've been doing for the past 5 minutes. And then you come around and iterate on it and you fix it, and nobody really, gives you the high five for hitting it on the second attempt. And so I must say, I think a lot of these visual updates and quality of life updates are fantastic. I love that they come back in and update these things and don't necessarily tell us. They just do it and your life's better, and you may or may not even notice it. But nonetheless, good stuff, good patch. I had fun over the past month. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. So I hope everyone enjoyed the video. I hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. This is Bustin' We. Thank you for being here.